of wine. The way we think of temperance is to do in moderation what is harmful to the body and in abundance what is healthy. That's not biblical temperance. Biblical temperance is to abstain from what is harmful, like alcohol, and in moderation what is healthy and good, as in these fruits.
Good morning and happy Sabbath once again.
Good
And
morning and happy
welcome
Sabbath.
to our Health Nugget. And so we're going to talk a little bit about temperance today. Thank you for joining us. And you just listened to a little video that was a lead-in from one of our daughters about temperance. So I'm going to read a scripture here, and we're just going to talk a little bit about what temperance means and how that can increase our immune system, all right? So 2 Peter 2, 1 through 5 and 6, 1 verses 5 and 6 tells us, and besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness. All of those are steps to remain connected and faithful to God till he comes. Why do you think Apostles Peter highlighted temperance as an important factor in our Christian walk? Clodwige?
Well, I think this list of qualities describe the life of a Christian, and it also demonstrates the nature of God and the requirements of what it takes to live a Christian life.
Sure.
And one of them is temperance.
All right. So what is your definition of spiritual temperance? I know we just had the video not too long ago, and it kind of gave an example of showed a bottle of wine, and how do we think of biblical temperance as it relates to that as an example? Fritz, you want to share?
Well, as you saw the video with this lady that looked like she can be my daughter,
Could be.
shared with us is the way we think about temperance is you do moderately what is not good for the body and do it in abundance what you think is healthy for the body. That's not really how God look at temperance. God says to abstain from anything that is unhurtful to the body and to do in moderation what is good for the body. In other words, if I have a plate of salad, I can choose to eat 5 plates of salad because it's good for me.
But we
I
love
still have to
salad.
do it in moderation.
Yes.
And just because you add a little bit of poison ivy, and you can say, well, it's just in moderation. Because it's hurtful to the body, you just don't do it. So, but unfortunately, the way the world look at temperance is you do it in moderation if it's not good for you, and you do it abundantly if it's good for you. So biblical, in short term, biblical temperance is abstain from what is bad, do in moderation what is good.
All right. So I want to and we're talking not just about the idea of temperance in eating, but temperance in all the things that we've talked about already. Temperance in exercise, temperance in getting sunlight, temperance in drinking water. So it's all of those things that require temperance. We were just away on the beach in St. Pete not too long ago, and we saw someone on the beach. I had to take a second look because I knew this was a Caucasian person, but her skin color was not. It was not tanned. It was coming up close to my skin color, and I thought about our subject of temperance and this whole idea that it's not just in our eating, but even in taking sunlight and in drinking and those things that are good, we don't want to overdo them. We want to take them in moderation. But those things are terrible. I'm thinking that marijuana may become legal soon. but those things are harmful to us. So that's not something that we would want to take even in moderation, smoking it. All right. So I'm going to ask another question. In a country where everything seems to be getting bigger every year, supersized foods. I remember when a large drink used to be maybe a 16 ounce, a 12 ounce. Yeah. Now it's, what's the largest food? 40, you've heard? I've seen, yes. 40 ounce of a drink. How do we apply temperance or self-control when we actually go out to eat?
I actually have a scripture, Proverbs 25,
Sure.
verse 16. It says, "If you have found honey, eat only enough for you, lest you have your fill of it and vomit it." I also look at it as asking God to help us to surrender and also to build a better relationship with food. I think there is just a misconception on how much we should be indulging when it comes to food. So it causes us to have a lack of self-control. But it's really through the power of God,
Yes.
asking Him to help us to learn and respect our temple, which belongs to Him. So too much of anything is not good for you. So in moderation, whenever you're out and about, even if you are even if you're at home, just taking small portions and learning the type of food that is beneficial for your body.
And that's if you think about it, sometimes you may forget because of the way this country celebrate food and celebrate not just food, everything has to be bigger, faster. And sometimes you forget that God says in His word that gluttony is a sin. So when you go to a restaurant, you have to make a choice. Do you live by the principle of God? And it's to put God, when God says something, it's because God knows what's best for us. God is not trying to condemn us or to restrain anything that's not good for when He says gluttony is a sin. But what gluttony does, it sends a bad image of God, where you see in everywhere else in the world where people are suffering because of want of food and water. And in United States, for example, we celebrate food. We eat food in excess. So then what that tells everybody else in the world, what that tells about the image of God. And we have to go back and say, a God that loved me so much, that care about me so much, why does it take time to put it in His word that gluttony is a sin? So we have to go back to understand whatever God says we should not do, there's a reason why the God of love says we shouldn't do it.
So just as a follow-up to that, as you were speaking, I was thinking about some of the diets that have become kind of popular that have, really high meats and really high, and so it doesn't really give that balance that we're used to. What advice do you have for folks that are following those? They feel like they're getting the benefit of weight loss, which a lot of people are looking for. They're looking for weight loss, but they're eating a lot of foods that are really high in fats, and we're kind of getting away from the potatoes and the rice because and so we're not getting that balance. What do you think about those kinds of types of ways that we eat?
When I think about, that's a really good question that you posed, because when it comes to weight loss, I'm sure that there's many people who want that change. I don't think that a lot of people want to be overweight. But because we're living in a society that embraces a certain type of image, there's a lot of pressure that people may feel. And I think when we start to educate ourselves in what type of food is good for the body, especially even at times, the type of food that you eat at certain times. I myself am learning. I'm not an expert when it comes to the health department, but I know the type of food that I like to eat, And one of them is potatoes. I like to eat potatoes. Potatoes is quite delicious, right? I
Yes.
love roasted potatoes, but I know the type of body that I have. I cannot eat roasted potatoes all the time compared to someone who have a high metabolism. So I think and also learning about calories, also adding exercise. There's just so many elements when it comes to that. And I think it's just a lack of education, but it's not a lot of people's fault. We were not raised in in certain areas that had access to gyms all the time. But yeah, I really think it's learning about the type of food that we're eating and learning not to overeat. That's what I think about.
Of course, of course.
And also, as Christian, it has to start from us. We have to believe what God says first, and then be a light unto the world. If we don't believe what God says is beneficial to us, then it'll be hard for us to go be light. And we have to go back to Genesis, what God says. So then Genesis is like the trademark that tell us everything else is for science. Because God is science. God is the head, the embodiment of what science is, because science means knowledge. So then the knowledge has to come from God. Any knowledge that brighten what God says is true science. So then when somebody says, for example, all you have to do is just eat meat, a lot of meat, and then you reduce your carbohydrate, then that's false science. Because when you go to Genesis, and when you follow the whole Bible, what God talks about, then it doesn't align with the Bible. So then that's how we, as people of light, not only have to believe what God says, and we have to go out there. On top of God, we have the benefit of spirit of prophecy that explain those things in details. Then we can not only start obeying those things, believing those things, obeying it, and go into the world and teach people how to make better choices, how to not trust in those false signs, those false teaching and knowledge.
Okay, thank you for that. So there have been lots of talk about boosting our immune system, and that's one of the reasons why we decided to talk about all of these ways that God has given us naturally that we can boost our immune system. Now, the others seem kind of more organic to boosting our immune system. We think about nutrition, and so obviously we can do certain things to boost our immune system. We think about exercise, we think about water and sunlight, and then we get to temperance, and it doesn't seem so, how do you say, it doesn't seem like it's something that you can do per se. But how does temperance, do you think, how does that boost our immune system?
One of it is one is like getting good sleep, and also taking a tech break. We're constantly we're constantly using technology, and technology does it has its benefits, but in moderation. And also I like I stated before, small portions. And you mentioned earlier how it seems like every generation there's an increase of size of our plates and our cups. So I think maybe I'm learning like a palm.
We're all learning.
I'm learning just smaller portions and incorporating a healthy mindset.
Yes. Yeah, and that's exactly what we want to do. We want to build on that knowledge, as the verse that was given, that I gave earlier. We want to build on the knowledge that we have. And so remember all those things that we talked about. I know that we have folks that are listening in that are building on those things. So it's nutrition, it's exercise, it's water, it's sunlight, and today, temperance. And we thank you for joining us again for another Sabbath morning, for another Sabbath morning health nugget. Thank you.